Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember 2 weeks ago when Mueller was going to be the savior, but that's what they're trying to do. I mean, they're not investigating actual crimes anymore. They're literally just trying to find something that they can make a big deal of. And if that isn't apparent to people around the country, I mean, remember, 2 years, this is going to be it. We finally got him. I've been hearing this for 2 years, where everyone's going to jail. Meanwhile, they haven't actually found anything as it relates to this. What they did was they put incredible pressure on regular guys that couldn't afford $1 million in legal fees and got them to slip up and say something incorrectly. You know, they pretended they were their friends. They got them, and that's all that happened. There are no actual crimes. There's only things that people did in past lives. In 2006, before we even thought we'd ever get into this crazy world. And that's what it is. And they're touting these things as victories. It's not. And what it's been is a total farce. The greatest witch hunt in American history.
Is Chris Christie wrong that the Southern...
Well, no, by the way, I'm not saying they're not going to try. Okay. Listen, their dream in life, this is, as political as it gets, their dream in life is to try to find something to get Trump. I mean, it's that old Stalinist tactic, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. We just got to find it, and we can massage things enough. So there's no doubt that they'll try. But again, I know how we functioned as a company. I know how we function as individuals. And that's why, despite all of this, for 2 years, we don't appear all that worried because we know there's nothing there.
All for the sin of the wrong person getting elected.
Correct.
Bye-bye, dickhead. See you in Attica. Yeah, I mean, the reason why Mueller hasn't talked to Donald Trump Jr. is because Donald Trump Jr. is a target. The reason, I mean, what is he saying there? That Michael Cohen was some poor schlub that didn't have money to pay for lawyers? Michael Cohen is a lawyer. Michael Cohen is your father's lawyer. Your father really did pay off porn stars and a Playboy model, and tried to hide it during the election. You actually met with Russians in Trump Tower who had written you an email saying that the Russian government supports your father and we have dirt that we'd like to give you. And you said, if it is what you say it is, I love it. These are illegal activities. This is actually taking foreign contributions. I mean, what is wrong with you? I feel so bad for Butthead. His brother is definitely Beavis. Whoever drew Beavis and Butthead, and I'm sure somebody in the audience knows who drew it. Mike Judge. Say I knew it. Somebody would know. They obviously had a picture of the Trump children right on their desk. Oh, I'll just draw them. Because that's exactly who they look like. I mean, Eric looks like Beavis, and Junior looks like Butthead. It's amazing. But tomorrow, they're going to ask Michael Cohen every single question that we've had. They're going to ask him about that BuzzFeed News report, because the BuzzFeed News report reported that Trump directed Michael Cohen to lie to Congress, and that you told Mueller as much, that you said that Trump directed you to lie about the payments. If that's true, then Donald Trump is involved in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. Period. So did he tell you to lie, or was it just that you knew what he wanted? That seems to be, the precipice for whether or not a crime was committed. But, do you believe Trump is obstructing the investigation? And do you have any evidence that he's trying to obstruct the investigation? For instance, okay, here's a little piece of evidence that's new. You remember the other day I kept playing for you Matt Whitaker's opening statement, because Matt Whitaker kept saying that Trump did not ask him to commit or promise that he could get this Jeff Berman, who had recused himself, Jeff Berman, who practiced law at Greenberg Traurig, a giant lobby shop that I have some information about, some dealings with, that Jeff Berman and Rudy Giuliani both practiced law at Greenberg Traurig, and that when they needed somebody to go to replace Preet Bharara as the U.S. attorney in New York, that Giuliani picked this guy, Jeff Berman. And so Jeff Berman was nominated. Jeff Berman is the U.S. attorney, except that he had to recuse himself because in New York, the ethics people decide whether you can sit on a case, okay? And Berman, it was decided, was too conflicted to sit in the SDNY cases. So he recused himself from SDNY. And Whitaker was asked about this, and Whitaker said that he did not promise or commit. Remember? Turns out that there's evidence that he did talk to Donald Trump about getting Jeff Berman to unrecuse himself. So, here.
Glenn Kirshner, it's a good point, and congressional committees do give witnesses an opportunity to clean up sometimes something they said. Let me just put up one of the statements that he might need to clean up, and we'll talk about it.
At no time has the White House asked for, nor have I provided, any promises or commitments concerning the special counsel's investigation or any other investigation.
And Kirshner, you think that's something he's going to want to maybe say, oh, I remembered something, come to think of it?
Yeah, Nicole, plus 1 point to Matthew Whitaker for telling President Trump that Jeff Berman cannot supervise the Southern District of New York investigation, but minus 2 points for giving what sure seems to be misleading answers on that very topic, whether the president ever pressured him, approached him, tried to get him to do something with respect to the Southern District of New York investigation. So I think ultimately Matthew Whitaker may have gone from the least qualified acting attorney general in the history of our country to potentially a subject or a target of a false statements investigation for what seems to be misleading testimony to Congress.
Yeah. So that would be conspiracy to obstruct justice as well.
Did you ask Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker to change the leadership of the investigation into your former personal attorney, Michael Cohen?
No, not at all. I don't know who gave you that. That's more fake news. There's a lot of fake news out there. No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. And so that will be part of the questioning tomorrow. Then he's going to be asked, Michael Cohen will be asked about the family. Can you give us any information about the frequency and the substance of your discussions with the Trump family regarding the Trump Moscow Tower project, right? That's going to come up. And also, you know, what campaign official did you talk to about traveling to Russia, right? Because in Michael Cohen's plea deal, he says, quote, he asked a senior campaign official about potential business travel to Russia, but it doesn't say who that official is. So expect a question on that. Then he's gonna be asked to describe any contact he had with the Russian government for the Trump Tower Moscow project. Then, if they're smart, they're going to ask him about the Steele dossier too, because in the Steele dossier it says Michael Cohen traveled to Prague, and he has denied it, you know, over and over and over again. But they're going to ask him today under oath, did you or anyone else associated with the Trump campaign travel to Europe, anywhere in Europe, during the campaign to meet with anyone associated with the Russian government or acting on the Russian government's behalf? Then they're going to ask him about Junior's Trump Tower meeting. Then they're going to ask him about, Trump. Did he get any information from any Russian that they were going to interfere in the U.S. Like, did he know that they were interfering? Because, you know, if he's unaware of any evidence that the Trump campaign coordinated with Russia, that's one thing. But if he is aware of anything, that's a bombshell. That's an amazing bombshell. Then they're going to ask him about the payments to Stormy Daniels. They're going to ask him about the payments of Karen McDougal. They're going to ask, because in his plea deal, he says that there were 2 Trump organization executives, right? And he's got that phone call. It says, we already spoke to Alan. That's Alan Weisselberg, right? The CFO of the Trump, who's also cooperating. But they're going to ask him who the other executive is. Was it a family member? Was it Junior? Was it Ivanka? Who's the other Trump executive that agreed to describe the monthly payments that you were getting to cover the payment to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal as a retainer. There was no retainer agreement at all. That was the thing Rudy Giuliani had to admit. And he said to Sean Hannity, no, he did make the payments. And Sean was like, what? That's news to me. Remember that? Yeah. They're going to ask him for that. Now, he was working as the lawyer. So who are these two executives? Who are these two executives who knew that you were, funneling money to them, but that you were saying that it was money coming from the Trump organization to you as a retainer? Weisselberg and who's the other one, right? They're going to ask, did any of the other family members know about the payments to McDougal? They're going to ask about AMI and their non-prosecution agreement. And what did David Pecker know? And has David Pecker caught and killed any other stories about Donald Trump? Any stories about his relationships with women? Any stories? Maybe the Epstein story. Yeah. Because they're going to ask him, was he at the meeting with David Pecker? Was he at the meeting with David Pecker? The Wall Street Journal says Trump was at the meeting with David Pecker. So we'll have to see if that's true. And then AMI's agreement with the government also indicates that David Pecker agreed at that meeting where Donald Trump Sr. was present that they would keep you apprised of any stories that arose, any of the stories that they would buy, catch, and kill. And they're going to ask him to describe any instance or every instance where you can recall David Pecker reached out to the Trump campaign to talk about a negative story. Are you, Michael Cohen, as you sit here today, aware of any other instances where the campaign helped arrange for people with negative information to be paid? Any girls, any women, any of the Miss Teen USA, anybody. They're going to ask him about, who was responsible for the Ted Cruz is having an affair story in the National Enquirer. Because, they accused Ted Cruz of having an affair, and whoever that poor woman is, I hope she got a lot of money. That is just disgusting. But, and who told you that AMI, that the National Enquirer, was going to put this thing about JFK, that Ted Cruz's father killed JFK? They're going to ask him about that. They're going to ask him if he drafted the letter that Stormy Daniels signed where she denied having an affair with Donald Trump. Was that your work? And he says he's got documents. This is the crazy thing. He says he's got documents. Now, when it comes to the sexual stuff, I want you to know Jim Jordan is on the oversight committee. He's one of the questioners tomorrow. I want to refresh your recollection about Jim Jordan and sexual abuse at Ohio State University when he was an assistant coach, an assistant wrestling coach at Ohio State. And the boys who were at Ohio State during the time Jim Jordan was an assistant coach have come forward to say that Jim Jordan knew that the coach, who has since passed away, was sexually abusing them in the showers, and that this coach was taking 6 showers a day with varsity team members, and that there was no way that Jim Jordan did not know this. You remember all this?
I did know Dr. Strauss. He was, he was there when we got to Ohio State, and was continuing to work at Ohio State once I left. So yeah, knew the doctor. But there is no truth to the fact that I knew of any abuse. Or I've talked to other coaches; they didn't know of any abuse. That's just not accurate to say those things, that we knew of it and didn't report it. It's just not true.
Is that uncharacteristic for Dr. Strauss? I mean, how do you characterize the accusations against Strauss, against him?
All I know is I never knew of any abuse from Dr. Strauss, plain and simple. Was the conditions as you described? Yeah, we had a separate locker room, but the shower facility was in the sort of the general area. Yes, he would do that, but they've been our faculty, staff, other students. That's just the nature of how the arrangement was.
He seems uncomfortable. Doesn't seem very comfortable. But remember, Jim Jordan has said this too.
But come on, I mean, you got to admit, this president has said things which are just demonstrably not true time and time again. I mean, the list is a very long one, almost on a daily basis.
I think Andrew McCabe has said things that aren't true, and the Inspector General did an investigation and was fired because of that.
Right. So you're very bold in calling out Andrew McCabe, not so bold on the President of the United States.
It wasn't me calling Andrew McCabe. It was his colleagues.
Okay.
I mean, it was
okay. So you haven't heard the president lie. You haven't heard the president lie.
I've not heard the president has always been square with me. That's for darn sure.
What about the American people?
The American people elected him president of the United States.
Okay, but have you ever heard the president lie? That's what I'm asking you.
And I've not. And the American people feel like what the treatment he's received from the top people at the FBI
I don't think you can talk about all of the American people, but I'm asking you just yourself, have you ever heard the president lie?
I've not.
I've not. That's Jim Jordan. All right, here's one of the boys. His name is Michael Sabato, and he was one of the kids that was abused by this dead doctor who, like, if you went to him with, bronchitis, he would inspect your genitals. He'd soap up your genitals in the shower, and you know the rest, okay? And this is Michael DeSabato, who knows Jim Jordan, who remembers Jim Jordan, who says Jim Jordan knew, okay?
So, frankly, it just was an unfortunate situation.
And Mike, I think everyone knows that a genital exam isn't necessary to measure body fat. I think a lot of those procedures, everyone knows at this point, not necessary to do what they were purported to do. You say this happened not just to you, but also other wrestlers, other athletes at the school while you were there. Now Congressman Jim Jordan was a wrestling coach. Do you believe he knew about this while he was there?
I know Jim knew about what I call the deviant sexual atmosphere that we were exposed to.
How do you know?
Well, we all had conversations. Jim was more like a big brother than a coach. He was, 23, 24 years old when I first met him in 1986, or when he first became assistant coach at Ohio State. I've known Jim for over 40 years, his family and I. I've been close to his family. I've stayed in touch with Jim over the years. We talk once a month.
Do you remember specifically talking to him about this back then while it was happening?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, it was something that we would discuss on a regular basis, mainly with nervous banter, locker room banter. If you've ever been in a male locker room, there's a lot of testosterone, and there was a lot of banter about, Doc being a groper. I don't think, to be fair to Jim, the words. I think there's a lot of semantics being played with words. I think it's unfortunate that he was advised and/or signed off on the statement that he gave.
Well, let me just get to that point again. Do you remember anything specifically he said to you about these incidents, what you call groping, at that time?
Well, again, yes, we had multiple conversations.
Yeah.
You get it. Yes, we had multiple conversations. And, Dr. Strauss is dead. But every day, here's the story that all these boys told. And in fact, one of the they're not boys anymore. They're 40-year-old men, or 50-year-old men. But one of the victims and the former head coach, Russ Hellickson, created a 12-minute private video, I won't play it for you, describing the abuse. And the former head coach, Mr. Russ Hellickson, recounts telling Dr. Strauss that he showered way too frequently and too long with student athletes. He said, quote, "I caught people having sex in our wrestling room, in the stairwell to the wrestling room, in the bathroom adjacent to our wrestling room, and I caught people masturbating, and it became a real problem because it affected their mental state. A lot of our wrestlers," he said, "certainly all of my administrators recognized that it was an issue for me, and I'm sure I talked to all of them on numerous occasions about my discontent with the environment." The investigators that were hired by Ohio State, they have all the confidential reports now of the sexual misconduct from the former student athletes. This man, this doctor, who was known to Jim Jordan and everybody at Ohio State, was molesting varsity sports students across 14 varsity sports teams. And Jim Jordan totally knew about it because it happened every day. This kid, it was not a kid anymore, he said Strauss routinely gave medically unnecessary extensive groin examinations, took as many as half a dozen showers a day with athletes in different sports complexes. DeSabato said Jordan's locker was located right next to Dr. Strauss's. It was an open running joke that Dr. Strauss was a serial molester. 3 Strauss victims also told Jim Jordan. So when we get to the, sexual peccadillos of this president tomorrow and Jim Jordan opens his mouth, start tweeting at him to shut the F up like I did last night. In fact, if you're looking for the content of the tweet that ought to be tweeted at Jim Jordan, go to @Randi Rhodes and you'll see that last night I told him to shut up. Because he has filthy, dirty, grimy, gross hands when it comes to sexual abusers and offenders. But yes, Cohn is going to be asked about, all of this stuff tomorrow. And he says he's bringing documents. And I don't know if he's got tapes or not. But he says that he understands that people know he lied, that he's a liar. And so he's not coming empty-handed. He will be able to corroborate. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.